So I was hoping a lot of it could take the form of a discussion for experiences of other people's views, which might not agree with mine. Please chip in and through various things about costume and period things. So what I was hoping to do this evening is to sort of concentrate on things that are direct to that film, not go down the sort of side tracks of to apply to any film. Costume films. So can we have the next is right. So the first question is why one? I suppose you could say why make any film? They're an interesting challenge, which I think is very. It's sort of like climbing Mount Everest, in the sense that it's what's the point of climbing Mount Everest other than it's a challenge. So that's one way of looking at it. Don't know if anybody else has got any views on that. Other reasons are lots of jobs for all members of a club. It's a club production, then it certainly gets people involved. Perhaps rather interesting, it brings in outside help, and that can be quite good. And some of them never leave. I won't mention our chairman by name, but that's one of them. Oh yeah. So it can. Sorry.
I said, oh yes.
Yes. The other thing, and I think this is quite interesting, is that they could potentially be very cinematic. So I would suggest, and this is my personal opinion, that all other things being equal, if you have a period film and a non-period film, the period film will look better. It's also, if it's based on a true story, we'll come a little bit back to that. It makes more of a general audience than you get with a sort of contemporary drama or something like that. So can we have the next slide, please? Right. So talking about challenges now. So I thought we refer to President Kennedy's speechwriter. He had an excellent speechwriter.
We're going to the moon.
He made. Pardon?
Are we going to the moon?
Ah, yes. You haven't seen the latest script, have you? Used to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. So it's the latter part of this quote that's actually drawing attention. So that's what a challenge is about, surely. And so in other words, just make the same old film again, but no, if you want to do something different and challenging, then it's going to be hard, but that's what makes it interesting. Does anybody else have any comments on that? No?
As long as it's not too hard.
Well, till you try, you don't know how hard it is, do you? Right then, next slide, please. Right, so I thought we'd go through the pros and cons. Now, other people might have some views on this. First one is student films do not date. Sorry, I was doing the first. Student films date. Now, I did send around a list of sort of costume films that our club had made when I sent around the first email about this evening. One of them on there, and a montage that we showed at the last meeting was Jenner, Edward Jenner film. That is, if you want to know Jenner, who invented fashion, a sort of interesting subject at the moment, then that's probably the best place to look in any book. So that film's now 50 years old. It's still up to date in the sense that you can watch it. It's perfectly fine. Technically, there's obviously issues, but it's all there. Now, a bit more controversially, I think it's easier to get help, particularly if it's about local history. If you're making some sort of little love story or that, to get people to up and lend you their buildings and all this sort of stuff is not that easy. But if you're making something particularly about a local the local scene, it is actually it's actually easier than it would be with just a conventional film. Any comments on that? I don't know if there's anybody, but I know it's a controversial view, that, but easier than the conventional. I think they're good for a club, which I've already mentioned. There's members involved. Now, by this, I mean they get invested in the club. Some people join the club and they sort of drift away after a while. But if you get them involved in a big production, they tend to hang around until they're so invested that they leave. One is you will meet all sorts of interesting people, including various types of artists, including costume makers, prop makers, all kinds of people, set builders, with their skills. So in a way, it's interesting because you're meeting the people. Making the film will get you involved in local arts. Yeah, sort of just the same point again. So that canvas then that you can pick on for smaller future productions. Has anybody else got any on that aspect of the pros? We'll go on to the cons in a minute.
So, Graham, I think your second point there, it's easy to get help, particularly if it's about local history. Is this based on your personal experience, I think, isn't it? So is it that controversial?
Yes. Well, I mean, it's controversial. It's easy to get compared to a non-costume film, I suppose. That was my point.
Right.
So if you say a working story or some of the other films, then you go around asking, can we have this free? Can we have that? It's harder than if you're saying we're making a film about some significant event in local history or something like that. The things being equal, of course, obviously, because a costume film is more work, but it's easy to get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
So perhaps when we talk about locations later on, that might be relevant. Now, some of the people here tonight know that because of their own experience on some of ours. So
I think also, Graham, I think it maybe gives you more of a sense of achievement as well when you actually have done something and you look at it and you think it does look believable, it does look period, and it gives everybody involved a real sense of achievement with a period film that maybe you don't get quite the same sense of with normal costume.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wish I'd thought of that.
Anytime.
So next slide, please. My Christmassy voice.
Right,
the cons. The obvious one is of work. So that goes without saying. The other thing is that they have to have a long lead-in time while they're launching the project.
What does that mean?
Sorry?
What does that mean, Graham?
Well, the period of time from when you start the project to when you start filming, basically, I would suggest. So you need a long time to get all the ducks in a row, sort of thing, before you can actually start film. And that's something that we'll talk about a bit later, I hope, in the practical side of that. But it is a long lead time. I think when we make, Dave might be able to correct me, but I think it was 2 years before we actually filmed anything. Yeah, and so 2 year lead time, and Mike mentioned about uncertain proof, but it was something similar to that. Wasn't it? About a year, 18 months, I think, on that one. So something quicker, but
the whole project for uncertain proof, Graham, took about 3.5 years.
Yeah, but it's the time period I was thinking of initially, which before you once you're shooting, it's a bit easier, strangely, because you haven't got to keep the faith. Yeah. What you've got to do is keep faith in the project leading up to actually something being shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've got to arrange all these, and yet nothing's actually been filmed. That's quite a stretch. They're also, the other point I think is that these sort of films are producer projects. You need a good producer who will put in the work. They're not really so much down to the director or the script writer. They are very sort of producer subjects. You need a good producer. Fortunately, the ones we've been involved with, we've had ex-producers who've actually driven the project forward. And I don't know if anybody else has got a view on that, but that's what my opinion is.
What does the actual
Steve
producer?
but he's too modest to say so. Yeah. Anyway,
what does the producer actually do, Graham?
Produces it.
I don't know, really. Just sort of moans at you and gripes at you and things like that, doesn't he?
Not very much, basically.
I think what it basically does, a good problem solver. So when you can't get a location, you can have plan B or C, or maybe there's a bit of a budget somewhere, but always actively think about a solution to a challenge like we like to have.
You just find a castle, Graham, and that's it, really.
Yeah, okay. He just fixed up a free castle for 3 days. I mean, that's not very much.
Is it true to say that the director does the artistic side of it and the producer does everything else?
Yes, that's pretty much it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So, should we go to the next slide?
Yeah. Hold on. I'm going to find the right button. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Right. My view is, this is a personal opinion game. Bigger films are easier. Well, I mean, that's bigger sort of thing, obviously. Now, if you want to make a new film, a very little one, we do on a club evening, or you do something in one afternoon, then I think it's a problem getting actors and things often. Well, we've got good services of people like Tim and so forth. But if you want to get something a bit more ambitious, getting people to commit for weeks on end, I think if you've got something where they're going to get a nice costume and all this sort of stuff, and there's a bit of a sense of occasion about the filming, I think it's more saleable to them than it is just turn up in your any old clothes and it's not. But if you actually sort of getting involved on a set with period set with costume, that sort of thing, it makes it a bit more interesting. And likewise, it's easy to sell a big film idea rather than a medium one to other parties you need to sell it to. Don't know if everybody agrees with that view, but that's my actual personal view. Perhaps it's just worked out. Yeah. The bigger thing is easier than the small thing, pro rata. Right, next slide then. Right, we're getting intellectual now. This is Ta, who was but for some reason he spelled his name Gotos. But he a German playwright and poet. Well, that's his dates. And he wrote lots of what are now quotes. If you look at a dictionary of quotations, there's just pages of them. And one of them, which is attributed to him, is this one. If we have the next slide, please.
Hang on, 1749.
Hold on.
Do you want to go back?
Okay, 1832. Okay, thank you. Just made a note of Goethe.
Now, can't do a German accent. So I don't know if what Tim wants to read this out or wants me to read it.
Yeah. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy. You're not laughing, are you? It's a chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative or creation, there is one elementary truth. The moment that one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help that would never otherwise have occurred.
Right, next slide.
Hold on, sorry, wrong thing. There we go. Right. Until one is committed, we've done that one, haven't we?
No.
Oh, okay. Right.
Page
yeah.
2.
I did that one.
Oh, yes, right. It's the next one.
Yeah, I'll do the
I
next
should
one.
explain that. Yes,
Well,
that's it. This is the rest of it. It wouldn't fit on the page. Yes.
yeah, okay, right. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance which no one could have dreamt would have come your way. Whatever you can do or dream you can, whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it.
So much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well
Thank you.
done.
Thank you. Thank you, Sue.
Yes.
Right. I can't see anyone, so I don't know what I'm talking about.
Right.
I think that applied to our experience at Ashton Court.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's that's one example of it. There are so many examples on the films that we've been involved with, and particularly Cabot years ago, where that seemed to be quite prevalent. Once we launched it, these things came out of the woodwork, and that does seem to happen. And it's but you start the project, which is obviously the hard bit, until you get to the point where it builds up its own momentum, and then all kinds of stuff start coming your way. And therefore, I think this is quite an interesting quote, because it does say that you've got to start your project and really believe in it, but then these things start to happen, and
You start to see the actual potential in it, and they get excited.
Yeah.
It's almost like self-marketing in some way, isn't it? It's like
Yes.
you've got a product to sort of show, and you're halfway through it. It's like we used to produce mini show reels, didn't we? You're halfway through the project to keep to whet the appetite.
Yeah. It's but what's happened a lot of our films is that we get some involved, and then they not say as an actor or something like that, and then they get quite into it, and so they start bringing their mates in or saying, "Oh, we can arrange you to use this or that," through their friend or something like that. There's this sort of knock-on effect that comes across. So it obviously you can't plan for this, but it does happen. And to my mind, if you start these big films, it always happens in some way, to some degree more than others, but it does happen. And so we're on your side once you get going. I won't bore you with loads of examples of it, but when we made Cabot Go, we wanted to find somewhere to film some of the scenes, and we thought about Bristol Cathedral, and we went to see the canon who was in charge of that at the cathedral, and he said to us, you can use the cathedral as long as you do it on this week 9 months hence. Dean's on holiday. Then he said, what could you use some of the choir as extras? And we said, well, yeah, I'd like to, but we haven't got any costumes. And he said, oh, we can arrange our own costumes. So we have a scene that was going to have about 2 or 3 people in it. Now has a great crowd scene in these rooms. And suddenly that's a classic example of something like that happening. But there was a whole string of them over the various films we've done. So begin it, and then fully Providence will take them. Can we have the next slide then, please? Now we've done the philosophy.
I think that boils down to serendipity. I like that word, serendipity.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
Which subjects work best? Probably, to my mind, for this sort of film, drama documentary, much maligned, but probably good for amateurs, because it provides ready-made plot and characters, possibly locations as well, probably an audience and local interest. Obviously, there are limitations, but I don't know. Well, by drama documentary, they can vary from something which just the commentary and people sort of acting out scenes in a sort of pageant-like way, or it can be a sort of a full dramatization of a historical event. All the films that I've been involved with, which have been period films, have fallen to some degree in this thing. The furthest one from it was Uncertain Proof, which is based on a true story, but with a lot of dramatic interpretation. But certainly some of the others are sort of just straight dramatizations, like Encounters with John Wesley and things like that.
I think perhaps Bristol Downs was a bit. Perhaps Bristol Downs was a bit different because that was a docudrama, but it was
costumes are a bit thick.
The costumes weren't very.
Don't mind me saying so.
Yeah, I think perhaps the costumes were the least important part of it from my point of view.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is it didn't really fall into the costume category.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I mean, you get if you watch films. We had the Edward Jenner one. That's where it's a voiceover, and but then you see all the action live. While some of the others we've done have actually done a straight dramas, basically. But so I'm not experienced of trying to do a period piece which is based on an entirely fictional story, but other people may have. Yes.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments before we move on? Right. In that case, next slide, please.
Sorry. Can I just ask one thing? When is it a period piece? What exactly makes it period?
When you can't use any today's costumes.
Right. So if it was 1960s,
that's a period piece in my book.
Period piece.
Right. Okay. Can we just diverge slightly from my plan here to make a comment about it? Because we haven't mentioned anything about what period, but I think that the further back in time you go, the easier it is to make a period film.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So if you're making one in the 1960s, you're in a nightmare because people remember that. Old people like me, anyway.
Me.
Yeah. So you've got to. So in fact, if you do something like 90s, you're in serious trouble. And also, it's everyone can see what's wrong because, if you've got some medieval thing, nobody knows what the hell it's supposed to be like anyway. So you get away with more. Yeah, it's obviously you try to be as accurate as possible. We'll come to that later, but yes, it's thing. But I think a period thing is anything where you have to worry about whether the plot is period or the acting, the period or anything like that. Yes,
medieval moon landing.
So
I like that. Well, that would be good. Yeah, we'll do that.
Sort of like steampunk. They have these Victorian things like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and things like that are sort of like that, aren't they? So you'd have a better version. Yeah, yes, yeah. Okay. I think we've got our next film, haven't we? Are we ready for it then? Yeah.
Do you want the next one?
Yeah, that's got. Right, making it happen then. Right, we're about the long pre-proof stages. So this is one of the guides, and probably to some degree, what you've got to do is you've got to work out a timetable for your pre-production stages, and imposes a sort of discipline on the project and puts tasks in logical order. Now, my memory of Cabot is obviously getting a bit hazy over a period of time, is that we mentioned took 2 years lead-in time. We spent about a year doing historical research, which was quite tricky for them because there isn't much. Then we allowed a year to find all the locations, costumes, and everything else. So we could then hit the ground running in the spring of 1994. That was our plan. Basically, when Steve was putting together Uncertain Proof, I remember that that we decided we weren't going to recruit the cast before a certain date, because otherwise they'd drift off again. You know, it's no good recruiting the cast. They say we're not starting shooting for another year. You've got to sort of do a timetable of what actually are going to get to the stages, and you put them into a logical order. As soon as you can, lessons toward. This is more important using a conventional Hollywood style script. Talking more about storyboards, but basically the sort of traditional script is the Hollywood script, which is one of those which says on the left-hand side, int, study, day, and then the sort of dialogue in the center of the page, which is what they use in Hollywood when you're trying to sell a script. But for our purposes, it's not a deal of help. And so if you want to skip that stage, you can do that bit. But if you want to skip it and go straight to a sort of shot list type script, then fine. That's my view. Because the scripts are written to sell script, not to actually make films.
I would disagree with that. I mean, the shot list comes after thing, but the development of the narrative, the structure is in the script.
Goes straight to the shot list. The Hollywood script is no different. It's the same words. It's the same.
There's dialogue that's written in there. I mean, unless you're going to improvise the whole thing.
No, the dialogue is in your shot.
You don't get dialogue in the shot list. The shot list is pure.
Yes, you do.
No,
Yes,
you don't.
Yes, you do.
No, you don't.
Yeah, two columns. You have two columns. You have sound, whatever sound is happening, which includes dialogue, and you have visuals, and that's done this loads of times. Yeah,
it sounds like there's various types.
That means you've got
storyboard, isn't it?
Yes, I think I've got a few people who are here tonight who can vouch for that, because they had to some of my scribble.
Say that again, Graham. I think you might have.
I think there's a few people here tonight who can vouch for that, because they had to type up some of my scribblings.
Yeah, but I think, but we did start. We did start with a script, but I'm thinking about Uncertain Proof. We did start with a script, but what we then did was turn it into a shot list, and the shot list did have a column with the words on, so we knew precisely in that shot what the dialogue was as well.
Yeah, that's right. That was it. I mean, to some degree, when you do this, I'm jumping a little bit ahead here, you can actually start to edit the film, so you can actually start saying this Don Fairservice rule. Don Fairservice was a BAFTA-winning editor who used to do a lot of stuff with our club a few years ago, about cutting on a consonant. You can start to actually think about that at the time you're doing the shot list and the storyboard. It's that. You know, that saves time later. So if the shot list, I mean, people have got different definitions, is that you have two columns at least. You might have a notes column as well, one of which has got the action in it, the other has got here normally the dialogue.
Right.
Next slide, please.
Okay.
Right, the challenges. Next slide then. That was nice heading. I'm sorry. Right. This is elephants running over Brandon Hill. This was a phrase that was coined by senior member of our club, who said that when you do the first draft script, what format the script is, don't be to include your wildest ideas. If you want to battle with 1,000 horsemen, then write in, and then compromise later, because you never know. Remember Goethe, you might get lucky. So I think the next slide is a blank screen, isn't it, Tim? Yeah, that's no, it's not this next one. Sorry, yeah, right. Well, when we make Cabot, we decided we want to start with a battle with 1,000 horsemen and cannons and all the rest of it. So we realized we would have to compromise on this a little bit. So we tried to do it as a montage, which hopefully we could show you a clip of. It's not sound on it. Obviously, you had a big sound on it. So I'm supposed to talk through this, I think. So would it be possible to try and play the video? Because I can keep on talking. Right. It's is it playing at the right speed for you? Because it's playing a bit slow for me, but you get the general idea.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
This film was made before days of computers and video, before the days of green screens, CGI, and all that stuff. So what you see on the screen, we had it was that. So we had to do this, but you noticed there was a big cannon firing in that sequence, and this
Shall I play it again?
If you like, yes. Yeah. And this is a classic example of the Goethe principle. We wanted a boat for this film, a rowing boat, and we contacted the sailing club at Pill, who had some old boats, and they lent us a boat and a crew to work. And then it turned out they had a cannon, a big cannon, which they used for starting races and things. So we then got the cannon as well. And so that was so it was one of these things where once you start the project, people introduce you to other people. That's an example of it. Right. So next slide then. Right. Now we're not planning to talk to this evening about script writing and all that stuff. That's like another meeting. So it's really the procedures of taking script forward that's interested in talking about. Now, as soon as you've got a full draft has been written, do a read through, and basically at this stage record it so you can listen to that. I mean, that's all the script writing, and let's do it later. Don't think at this stage for actors, just get anybody to say the lines, and that helps because it gets rid of some of the over long sequences and all the dialogue sequences, all that sort of stuff. Then redraft the script, put it again, and repeat as many times as necessary. Then, when you're reasonably satisfied, record it with actors, but you don't necessarily have to have the actor casting in the film. You might have got anywhere near the casting stage, but people who can sort of put some characterization into the voice. Has anybody got on that?
So on the last recording, would you be doing it with moves as well to try and get the business involved?
No. This is entirely audio.
Oh, it's not video; it's just audio. Okay,
just audio. Yeah, there will be the because it's before you've got any visual references.
Okay.
So yeah.
It's just about finalising the script, isn't it, Graham? Really?
Yes. This is the It's does it work or not? Sort of script. Yeah, that's about yes. Yeah. And if you listen to it, it's best to close your eyes so you sort of might start mentally seeing it in your head, sort of thing. Right. Next slide, please. Yes. Right, using a storyboard. Now, my view is that when you're making this sort of film, it's not necessarily for all films, but when you're making this film, you need to work. You need to use a storyboard, and it's really cool. You could work out exactly what appears each shot, and this is so useful because you can if let's say we're talking about a scene set in a pub, you have your main character sitting in the foreground and then some people sitting in the pub in the background as extras. So if you draw it as a storyboard picture, you can say, oh, well, we don't, how many extras do we probably need to make it look like a pub in the background? Then you can say, well, they're just sitting down all the time. So they don't need any trousers or trousers, I should say, or shoes. Yeah. And things like that. Oh, if they've got their backs to the camera, you're not even going to see their beer mug. So you don't even need a beer mug prop for them. You only need one for the one who's sort of facing the camera. That storyboard gives you all the information you need about a particular shot, including some of extras needed in the shot and what props you need, which I mentioned. And then when you come to locations, when you come out of your locations, then you can start looking before you've got the storyboard. It has to stand what locations or sets you need, because you probably need a room, so you can use a room that's not completely period. Now this widens your choice. For example, the scenes we filmed for Clarkson was filmed Gordon's dining room, facing inside wall, but the outside wall, of course, had windows and things. If we'd been looking for an actual period room, we'd have to search far and wide. But because we knew exactly what shots we needed, and we knew that they could be done against the other wall, which was appropriate, it was quite easy. We just filmed the director's own dining room. So it gives you a huge amount of thing because you're looking for. Now later on, when you actually come to film it, it's really useful to have a storyboard because you can explain to the crew quite easily what you need for each shot by just holding up your picture and there we are. We want. And it's great for discussing things even like lighting and the DOP and aiding the camera operator in understanding what sort of framing the director in mind. There is another reason they're useful later on in shooting, which is when you can keep track of the filming, because when you shoot out of order and things like that, it gets a bit muddly. If you've got a storyboard, you can much easier track of exactly where you are, what you shoot, what you haven't shot, and all that thing. Personally, they are they're essential for this sort of film. Not obviously small, not, but any sort of period type film, they are absolutely essential. And I think a lot of effort needs to be put in the storyboard. I'm about actually doing it in a minute, but I don't know if anybody else has got any experience of this, or is it this my own sort of hang up this? Should we go on to the next slide?
Can you see it?
How to make the most efficient? Yes, that's right. Can we have the next one then? Hopefully we'll, yes. Right. This sequence now with again was filmed in one corner of one location. It's meant to be a pub in 18th century Bristol, where our two heroes are sitting at one table, is describing to the other people in the pub. So should we start to play it? Right, these are our two heroes sitting in the pub, and he points out some other people sitting elsewhere. That bloke over there, and they talk about him, and then this other table over there, corner of the pub, and Yes, it's now what's significant about this is that all of this was filmed from the same camera position, and this room was actually very small. You might recognise that Julie there leading somebody astray. The camera never really, but this and the furniture was just rearranged to do the different scenes. And this is because it was all storyboarded. We could do this. So our heroes are sitting on the same chairs and the same table as this table, but it's just the way it's to together. Same bit of wall just moved across from the other shot. Same props, I think, because of low budget production, but it was a sequel. It makes sense. You don't see it.
Nice filming.
Yeah.
Very atmospheric, isn't it?
Mm. It helps with it being dark.
Yeah.
Stu Mackay was on that one.
Yeah, that was a Stuart sequence. That was, yeah. Stuart, yeah. Stuart lit this. Yeah.
It was amazing what you could do with the wallpaper, wasn't it? It was bricked wallpaper you can buy from B&Q.
Yes.
Really?
Oh, was it? That's good.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And it's amazing. You start looking around at some of the wood surfaces, and decoration, you realise then what potential you've got then for a small budget.
Yeah.
Provided you don't lean against it.
Yes. Well, we should we mention the slave ship at this point?
Oh, yeah. So the table's all gaffer taped together.
Well, might as well. In the same film, we wanted the interior of a slave ship, and we had a bit of difficulty getting some slaves because they're a bit difficult to buy these days. But eventually, we recruited some, and we built this set of actually part of the slave ship to chain them up in. And they were rather boisterous. And when we watched the rushes, unfortunately, the whole ship was shaking apart. And so we had to cut a lot of the shots, which was a real pity because the work that got into it.
Essentially, it was a very sort of angled lighting, wasn't it? So less is more, lots of shadows, yes. And then I think just trim over the top with ropes and things to cover the legs of the tables that were all strapped together.
Yeah, but it worked. I mean, the slave ship still appears in the film, but not to the full extent that we hoped it would. Anyway, perhaps we get on to the next slide. Right, preparing the storyboard. This is the more detailed stuff. Now, this is my viewers. Don't worry if you can't draw. I cannot draw because some of the scripts I've done have been visible. Depends how. If you're getting bored, they get more and more scripts. You're doing some scenes, and then other scenes you might make more of an effort. But it doesn't really matter how bad that, as long as they're clear what you're trying to intend by the shot. Now, important point here is that direct prepare the storyboard, nobody else. That is really got to be his baby. If he wants help with the drawing, then she must sit alongside the art all the time that the artist is doing the drawing. On no account should this work in isolation. If they did, make the artist the director effectively. This is what it's an awful lot on. So the director's got to do it himself. He's got to be telling them exactly side when I'm doing it. Now, one tip is to put each shot on a separate piece of paper. This means you can edit the shot sequence before the filming begins. So in other words, you think, well, actually, we'll start on the close-up. No, we'll go to the long shot. Swap the close-up and the long shot as the opening shot around. You can move them around in your storyboard. Now, if you don't think this scene's working properly, you could sort of think. Now, this is a tip from Steven Spielberg. And evidently did this on Raiders of the Lost Ark. He storyboarded everything, every single shot. and then he by having it pinned up on the wall. And when he then went and shot the film, he only shot what was on the storyboard, which means that he didn't waste anything because it was extra shots. It was exactly what he was. And because of that, he came ahead of schedule and under budget for a film like that. Was quite incredible. But that was how he did it. So it was the sport that did it. Now that you've got is put in a storyboard picture for every, however short. There must be no exceptions to the because when you come to film it, it gets too confusing if you haven't got one for every single shot. You can't keep track, particularly shooting out of order. So you've got to put in a storyboard picture shot. Now, if one storyboard picture is exactly the same as another one, just say a dialogue between people, apart from the words, then just photocopy it, okay? But you've still got to have that sheet to film as separate sheets of paper. Consider the option of merging a read-through with a storyboard and making a video. Now, we did this, or Tim did this, for Uncertain Proof, and Tim actually was able to read through on his own, like all the characters.
Yeah, and there was something like 1,100 storyboards, I think, wasn't there on that?
Yes.
And yes. I mounted my camera vertically over a pile of storyboards in a box, an A4 box, and I just clicked and moved one and clicked and moved the next one, and then just turned them into a sequence in a film, and then just let myself rip with all the silly voices I could think of.
There's the software to help with this. I mean, there's quite a lot of previs software around nowadays. I mean, one I do know is Previs Pro. I mean, that's free for a month. I mean, I think it's 170 quid for a year, but it's free to use for a whole month.
Yeah,
and that allows you to put it all together quite easily.
I'm not sure it existed then. This is going back, what, 15 years or something?
No, I'm just saying now that it doesn't have to be a paper-based thing. That there are tools to help with this.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sue?
What's it called, Caroline? What's that?
There's one called Previs Pro. It's on Apple and iPads and iPhones. So it works on Apple products. I mean, to buy it costs 170 quid a year, but it's free to use for 1 month. So if you think you can storyboard something in a month, you could use it, do it all for free.
Yeah.
It's very good. I've got a copy of it, and it's you can change all the camera angles, the focal lengths, the lighting, different characters. They're all part of the library of things, and at least you can get the flexibility is that everything's movable and everything's in 3D.
Yep.
That's a different sort of pencil, though. It's just principles I'm getting at with this. That of doing every shot, however short, and things like that I think is a crucial thing. It's because when you come to the thing, you can keep track of it better if you've got it that. The doing the video version of it as well is a luxury, I think, but it gives you a test the pace editing a little bit, and it seemed to me, though I know that Jane didn't use this when she edited Uncertain Proof, but if I was editing, I put this thing on the timeline for the proper hit and go through and replace it with the real shots when they were shot. That would be my own approach, but not actually done that, I have to say. But so you see, I'm a bit of a fanatic for storyboards.
Yeah. Can I just say at this point that Graham is incredibly good at drawing horses wearing trousers.
Yeah. Well, I said any old scribble. Yes. So that proves it. Yes. Plies always have thick legs, I think. Yes.
They certainly do.
Yes. Other people regard that as some sort of art, wouldn't they? I mean,
well, it made me laugh.
Should we go on to the next slide?
Yes, what a jolly good idea. There we go.
Right, Live Labour. and this is unusual. We have produced the big cheese who's probably putting it all together. There's an extra point on here that I forgot to put on here, which remind me if I don't mention it at the end. The director freed up to the talent and artistic staff and all that sort of stuff. Nothing else. He must definitely not be the camera operator. Probably nearly all films, to be honest, we have it because you have actors and things involved, because it's too distracting if they are having to fiddle with their cameras, do cameramen do focus or something, and if they can't do that and consider the artistic side of the project. You need at least one assistant director for a big film to manage the set, the specialists, control the extras, call the shots, sort of stuff. Again, freeing up the director to concentrate on the thing the director should be concentrating on. Now, I mentioned, it's a good thing for club productions because there's a lot of important jobs for club members to get involved in, and this is one of them. It's probably unsung. It really is an important. The producer we've already mentioned, and that's vitally important, obviously. The DOP is required. By that, I mean somebody different than the director or one of the other jobs. No doubling up, right? And they do the lighting and the look of the thing and set the instructions for the camera operator and all that sort of stuff. The camera operator should be somebody separate the director of photography, because otherwise they're chasing backwards and forwards to lights, filter, when they're also supposed to be focusing the camera, and it slows down. Perhaps one of the things I should have mentioned is that often used under quite a high speed, because you're allowed to use a location for a limited amount of time, so the clock is ticking all the time. And what jobs as a producer is irritating to sidle up to you and say, "We've got to be out of here by 5 o'clock." Just when things are getting a little bit. You need some. Tim called them gophers when he typed up the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
But,
I think the term you're looking for, Graham, is runners.
We've got gophers and runners in this one.
Yes. It says gophers and runners. Yeah. Well, what was the other thing I had to mention? Forgotten it again already.
While you're remembering that, I thought that gophers went and got stuff, and runners are the people that actually transported people around. Is that wrong?
I think these days runners do everything.
Oh, do they? Perhaps they transport gophers around. I don't know.
What about
catering
continuity,
refreshments.
Graham?
Sorry.
Continuity.
It's
Yeah.
on this.
Sorry. Yeah. What I've not mentioned is things that I didn't think were apparently in period film. That applies to all films. Yeah. But so that's why I have.
You say that again, Graham. So you can say that bit again.
Sorry.
You say that last.
What I was concentrating on tonight, perhaps I should have made this, is things that I think are particularly important when you're making a sort of period film or costume. The things that are extra special for those sort of films, while continuity is an issue for all films. So sure. I have mentioned it. It's like we're not discussing the quality of the camera work or that sort of tonight. It's things that are particularly sort of relevant to this. Oh, I know what it was I was going to suggest. We haven't done it for a long time, but there is a case for having a quality control officer. We did it on. Pardon?
Quality control.
A quality
control officer.
A quality control officer. Oh,
yes.
Right. Okay. What's one of them then?
Dave, I don't know if Tim was aware of it at the time, but will remember. We used to have a monitor taking camera was feeding in, and then he was quite sitting. Well, quite the person we had was very experienced, but I mean, sitting under a black cloth looking at the monitor. all the time. That was their sole job.
That's right.
And their
to
job was
stay focused, and and that was it. You're in the zone.
Yeah, so the several things they had to do was to double check that the basic right focus. Also check wasn't anything, because you period piece, anything incongruous, not, nobody's, and then actually saying if this actually a good shot or a crap shot, and making a view on it and saying, I think we ought to think about this again, something's not quite right. And probably so you need some experience doing that, to be honest, because if you're making a judgment about the quality of the shot generally and things, but it's probably something that's worth considering, because it does give you a bit of a safety net, because when you're filming, the damn things that are still sort of like to think a bit ahead and all the rest of it, getting distracted. So somebody just nitpicking it, so to speak, is possibly a good idea. So sort of what's they call it in football? I don't know about what's it, the automatic linesmen they have these.
VAR, what's it called?
What is it? Well, they have some second referee, don't they? Yes. Watching the telly or something. Yes.
Oh.
VAR, video assistant referee.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's sort of like that films. Yeah. Right. Anything else on this one, or shall we move on?
Were you thinking, Graham? Were you thinking of having a break at any time?
Yeah. Well, yes. Right. You want it now?
It's half past 8 gone. So
I was assuming we tended out a bit fraction of this reason.
You broke up completely there. Can you say that again?
Well, we have to break a bit later this on most of the meetings.
Okay. Well, you decide.
Yeah.
Right, we'll carry on.
I thought you're obviously getting bored. I can't remember what the next slide is, I'm afraid. We have it, please. Oh, historical research, right. It's a bit lighter now. Not talking directly about writing the script, because that's obvious. If you're doing historical period thing, don't have enough research to write the script. But it's also useful if you read up background stuff about the period that you are setting your film is set in. So it makes it easier when you're going out for locations, prop sort of stuff, and just generally put a little in your script if you're actually writing it from scratch to other things of that period, So basic sort of reading just gives you, doing a script, you can add a bit of texture to it as well. Getting pretentious now. If you make a documentary or drama documentary, or even possibly a drama, you can consult local academics and museums and things. They're often happy to give free advice, because it obviously quite interesting. Somebody's actually interested in the obscure bit of history thing, so it's worth doing that. I don't know if anybody else has got any comments on that aspect.
Well, I think it's key to choose an interesting story or an interesting character. Something that's going to capture people's imaginations. There's a lot.
I'll tell you an interesting thing about when we did Uncertain Proof in our lead-in time. We had in our script the main character turning up at a monastery with a letter, and you saw the films, medieval films, and Robin Hood. People turning up with great scrolls or great big sheets of paper, so we thought that was some big sheet of paper, which was a letter from the Pope, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. Anyway, we arranged to go and see the Berkeley Castle, and he actually showed us some real documents from that period, which is 13, so incredibly old, but the real actual documents. And what I had never realized is that they were tiny. They were incredibly small pieces of paper. And this is that paper was so expensive that they had to really conserve it. So you bought and you packed a lot to your very tiny bit of paper because paper was so difficult to make and things like that. Which we take paper so for granted these we forget that it was actually a rare thing in those. So of course we make sure that we had the right to paper in the yes. So it's when we made Cabot years ago, we had a bit of an unfortunate thing. We went to Bristol Museum with Ken Rees, the producer, and we met a real actor told us about what kind of things people drank. And there was particular type of cup. We're not talking about the sort of grand king and about ordinary sort of people in the pub and things, what thinking out of. And there was sort of type of pottery cup. We commissioned a potter to make some of these cups up. The truth is, in the finished film, when you see them, they look like plastic cups, even though they were pottery. And so everything's got plastic on the table now. And these expensive pottery cups that we had commissioned in the academics. So can backfire. Anyway, next slide. Can't remember what's next, I'm afraid. We'll start with it. This is it. Sources of information. Right. This I'm suggesting children's books, particularly good if good quality ones. The classic Ladybird books, that's the ones which had the text on the left and the picture on the right for the historical subject, are pretty good because they had a policy of making sure they were as accurate as they could make them at that time. Classic Ladybird books. Also, those books called R.J. Ed, whoever he was. You remember him from school because I think they were particularly sort of type books. They've got loads of drawings in them, and again, historically high accuracy and things like this. But where'd you get these things? At charity shops. Ladybird books, I think, are now booted from the children in charity shops to the collectibles section. So because they've become collector's items now, they're a bit more expensive. But if you just shop around, they will surface. So what's next, Tim? Remember,
Costumes.
Yeah, costumes are a difficult one, to be honest. Obviously, as we're talking about costume films, they are kind of vital. But my experience with our different films has been different on each film, which means that it's harder to see a pattern. So I won't spend a lot of time about where you get them from, other than make some general ones. I take you on the films I've worked on where I've not been producer, that it's the producer's responsibility, which is a good way of passing the buck. But there are some issues. You can hire costumes. The problem is that you're making the film over a period of time. It's difficult to hire them for any length of time because they normally hire out to drama groups, things like that, and have them for a week. Well, we might want them for 6 months, and that can be tricky. So hiring costumes easy. Also, we'll come on to the things to your head on this thing, why it might be an issue as well. An organization, Backwell, that hired out Long, which we used on a few of our films, which was very useful, but they no longer in business. So having said that, let's think about what are the issues with costumes. Basically, the main one, my obsession, is they need to ensure they're dirty enough, and probably expensive costumes that you are not allowed to dirty up. Some of the films we've had the costumes actually made for the film, and that gives you the freedom to do like with them, and that is a definite plus if it's possible. That means you've got to recruit somebody who is sort of dressmaker basically, who can actually make up the costumes. This is partly where the further time with your historical film the gets, because medieval costumes are easier than say high Victorian or something like that. But the dirtying down is important. What you can do is soak the costume in tea or diluted Worcester sauce. And this is why a higher one is a little bit tricky. I don't know if anybody else has got any experience of this issue. Well, the costumes and the dirty ballistic.
The term dirty and worn, I think, can slightly be differentiating. It depends very much on what sort of drama it is. And absolutely, as you say, if you're hiring the costume, then it's a little bit difficult. I find it certainly, as far as worn is concerned, you can just attack it with an abrasive paper, which is what I've done. But it's certainly very important, like as you say.
Yeah. You did quite a lot of work on the costumes when you were about to do your Dickens thing, didn't you? I still look at the photos every now and then.
I did, yeah, but I mean, with those, to be perfectly honest, I mean, a lot of them was what's the word? The foundation was an already existing thing that I bought from a charity shop. Right. I made like frock coats out of women's coats, which it's amazing actually. When it comes to Victorian fashions, the men's fashions weren't so different than female fashions. The way the shoulders were cut and everything else. Unfortunately, you have little darts where the breasts are on women's things, but it depends to what extent that they're being shown, of course. If they're in the background or you're only doing a head and shoulder shot, then absolutely fine. And of course, what you see is all that really matters. For that particular film, I felt it was quite appropriate, as far as the story was concerned, to have Charles Dickens involved. I only wanted him as a ghost, so it wasn't important that the costume was very detailed, but I did want it all right. I did want it accurate, and I did the makeup and my hair and everything, and surprisingly, it came out an awful lot better than I thought it did. And I was really, really quite shocked. I mean, I thought I did really quite a decent Dickens. But I was only filming him from the front, which was a good job because the jacket was based on just a general men's length jacket, but I wanted it to have that, you think of it as an Edwardian cut. I mean, it was a Victorian thing really, but you know, it's like that coat that comes just above the knee. So to get the material required, I took it off the back. So although the front looked like this nice sort of frock coat, from the back it was all safety pins and bits of tape and all sorts of stuff. But of course that doesn't matter. You know, if you don't see it, film is all about pretense and artistry.
That's show business, isn't it? Make it look right. Yeah. Right then. Shall we move on, Graham?
Yeah, next slide then, please.
There we go.
Right, sets. Don't be scared to build your own. Now, this is getting a bit more radical now. See, talked about locations and things like that. Talk a bit more about this, I think. But obviously, eventually point where something that is a proper set, you know, completely artificial. Now, when we made Sunset, we built the interior of a room in Kabul. Not surprisingly, and it was we had to do some research there what an indoor room in Kabul looks like, and we actually built that out of proper slats, which we borrowed St. Paul's Players drama group. Tim's first experience of filming with the FVS was on February Saturday afternoon, filming a carport on a set which consisted of a sort of I think it was painted with mud behind him, and then a beam hanging on rope of him to create an artistic shot. that was thought filmmaking he's ever recovered.
Well, I'll never forget it. So we had the shrouds from this sailing boat. Well, it was the Matthew, wasn't it?
The rat line. The rat line, yes.
Yeah, and I thought this looks ridiculous, and I'd never filmed anything before, I don't think. But when you see it on the screen, what you just use your imagination to see what is outside the screen, and that's what we did. Shall I show that bit of film?
Well, this isn't the bit that in the because we did wait till it was a bit warmer to film this bit, but this is the Stormy, which was filmed in the same carport. Now there's no sound on this. Obviously, it's got a big sound, a stereo soundtrack on this one, and so you're hitting.
Shall I play it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Right. Yeah. Basically, this is a set in the carport. Intercut the same set transported down to the coast for a shot. Self-evident. Down on the coast.
And there's lots of camera shake as well, isn't there?
Yes,
or camera
yes,
movement, anyway.
yes, yeah.
To add to the whole storm effect.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful. This, I mean, considering how simple it was. See, that's what I saw. That shroud there with the ropes, that beam across, and that's all that there was.
Yes.
And then you just use your imagination to see the whole ship when you see that sort of thing, don't you?
Yeah. Now, when we filmed this, we sprayed everybody with a hose all the time, and when we had water hitting, that was 3 dustbins filled with water mixed with milk, because the milk makes a tip simultaneously to create enough gush of water. That's you can watch the whole sequence on the which is longer than that on the film itself, which is on the website. So so that's sets. Now it's worth doing, because we also built another 2 sets for Cabot, which was the interior ship and the of the ship. Both of those were built in the club room, the old club room we used to meet, and that's all
You managed to get the club room for several weeks then, exclusively.
No, we got 2 weekends. We got 2 weekends.
2 weekends, right.
Yeah, we had to go in on the Friday evening, because the actor in those days, so you escape this. We had to go in on the Friday evening. We weren't allowed in until 9 p.m.
Yeah. Because
there was a wave on. Then we had to build the set and ready to Saturday morning to film. Obviously, you had to strike it all on Sunday evening. So it became a bit of a tourist attraction. People found we turned the club room into a into a ship. People came in to see it. But don't be scared of thinking about doing sets, is all I'm saying. Obviously, it depends what the film is, whether you need a set or don't need a set, and all that sort of stuff. So, but think about it. It might be a solution.
Graham, I thought that one of the best things that the club's ever done is the slave scene in Clarkson, which was filmed in the church, in the St. John's room. And it just
that's right, yeah.
2 tables with some black actors and some lights. And I thought this is just going to look terrible. And when you watch it, it is so impressive. It looks fabulous. It really does look good.
Yeah. That's what I were referring to earlier, Dave James. The fact is that the scene was bigger than that, because originally it had the captain and everything walking through the thing, but unfortunately the set was not enough, and when the slaves were pulling against their bonds, they caused the whole ship to wobble in an unrealistic way.
Well, the tables, you mean?
So it's a lot of it, which is a pity. The sequence was originally considerably sort of, but we had to cut it back, which is a pity. That was that was relatively simple stuff. That was just woodwork painted to look, panels of cardboard painted to look like wood. That was done by Ray Henry. You just painted on that morning. And because I remember that morning, we only filmed it in the afternoon, and the church was locked. We were locked in the church. Me and Ray upstairs on the landing in the and we had he had sort of table. He was paid away top of actually on the landing, which we probably weren't doing, and suddenly there was somebody trying to get in the door. So I went down to the door of the church and sort of entered. There was this bloke there with a dog. So I said, "What do you want?" Sort of thing. And he said, "I'm the vicar." And I shit. Can't let him go upstairs because he'll see what mess we're making. Managed to talk him away, amazingly, to cater. But no, that was that scene. I think you're right. It just shows you can do something with that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah. Sorry. What? Yes. Yeah. Props. Obviously, key thing. Charity shops, particularly, borrow or make them. We've done all of them. Various films. I don't know if anyone else has got any. Seems fairly self-evident. That's what you have to do. It's it isn't quite as difficult themes, to be honest. Strangely, and borrowing them is obviously a little bit fraught back to you must damage them and all that stuff. And charity shops, you've just got to keep on going in shops, I'm afraid. But as you're looking at the books, the kids' books, you might see something that might think, oh, that's a suitable thing, a couple of quid or something. You can use it. Everybody had the experience of props. I mentioned I think Steve managed to borrow some proper props from Uncertain Proof from a medieval reconstruction group, didn't you?
We did, yeah. And we got some of them from drama groups. We got some of them from old shops, like you said, charity shops and things like that. And you just gotta be aware of when you're out and about, or just pop in here and pop in there, and you can pick them up for £1 or £2 here and £1 or £2 there. And you gradually build, what you need. It's not a magical answer.
When we made Up the Downs, Tim.
Bristol Downs.
Up the Downs. We made quite a few props for that.
You did, didn't you? You made a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And I got like stuff off YouTube and. For the suffragettes. Yeah.
And we you got a Roman. There's just one Roman helmet, or three. No, it was three, wasn't it? Three Roman helmets.
Three. Yeah.
With the feathers that fell out.
Yeah.
It was. The
best one was the chicken. Not the chicken. No, what Tim made.
Oh yeah,
the dinosaur.
Dinosaur, yeah, that was brilliant. That was. Yeah.
I don't know where it's got to. I think it's probably run off somewhere, isn't it? No, that was a star. It was excellent.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, those were the days.
Right. Now, one thing I'm going to bang on about. Sorry.
I was to say, even with Uncertain Proof, we were finding things like. Wax, coloured wax with a seal, because it had to be done live, and you had to pour the wax, the hot wax onto the paper, and it had to be the right paper or the right looking paper, the small pieces that Graham spoke about earlier, and then the stamp, put in the seal on it, and you look on the internet, you can nearly always find anything that you want, so you just need to have the time. And the effort into it, and that's where the lead up that Graham was talking about comes into play, because you do need lots of time to source all these things.
That ring not go on your finger anymore.
Now paper again. If you use paper, I don't know whether paper in the old was as white as modern paper, or it's all old paper has faded, so it doesn't look as white now. No, interesting sort of.
It's like a creamy yellow last time, I think, wasn't it?
There's bleach in it now. I wouldn't have said that.
Right. So white paper doesn't look right in the period anyway. Well, whether it was actually originally white, it still doesn't look right. So you've got to dirty it up. So soaking cold tea is weird. You've got to be a bit careful with that these days, because not all printer inks sometimes can react with water, unfortunately. But it's a classic way of making paper. Put some tea in it and then pour and then the paper in it, and then dry it off. It looks more parched like and stuff. Quite effective, to be honest. Yeah. Right. Anybody else got anything on that? Next slide. Yes.
I think just before we go on, it's very much about perception.
All right.
It's like you said, Graham, sometimes it's just a case of it possibly may have been bright, shiny. Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't. But, it could have been a lot bright, shiny, newer. Houses at one time were really nice and clean in the Victorian times, but they don't look right. If it throws you, I think it's more important that the perception is correct rather than the actual truth of the matter.
That's right. Well, they reckon a lot of castles were white, don't they? But of course, if you put a white castle up now, it just doesn't look right.
No. Makeup. Now, makeup's just, unless you've got a makeup art, it's difficult to do well. One trick we've asked people to ask men not to leave, which just gives them a slightly rough edge to them. Whether or not that's historically gay, Tim was saying, it's the point is your perception is sort of, it gives it a better sort of period feel, particularly if they're not somebody who is posh, Also use burnt cork to dirty people up, and you can use this to make women look like men. The reason you might want to do this is that if you haven't got a male extra, and get some women extras on. I'll go into all kinds of things, but also we've had it where people riding horses have had to stand in for the man.
Standing horse. No. Oh dear.
But yeah, we've had to pay people in for the men, and therefore we've had to put the cork. This is where you just put a real cork on a plastic cork, your copious red wine drinking, and then stick it in a hob or something, just for a few with pliers to make it black, and then you can run the posher makeup things. But that's actually quite good. Don't know what it is, because it's not sort of oily like that sort of makeup can be. So
one of the things I recall, Graham, is when you're doing these things over a long period of time, like Uncertain Proof was I don't know, probably 18 months in the shooting, is using these actors over a period of time, is making them look the same over that long period of time, because you make the film in 3 or 4 or 5 months apart for scenes. And then I remember Fieschi turned up one day, he'd washed his hair one morning. He had long shoulder length hair, which looked great in the film, but it all looked really frizzy. The way that women's hair goes frizzy sometimes. And it looked really quite ridiculous. And we were trying to work out what we could do to make it look like it did a week or two before when we shot the previous scene.
Didn't they have to get their hair cut as well?
And we had to get a hairdresser in, we had to get somebody to cut some hair. And we did get a professional makeup lady, which we managed to get to do some work for free. I think if you recall, David, I've forgotten her name now, but she came to do Lisa Maria. And she did some cuts on some hands, and she showed it at the film club about 12, 15 years ago now. And we used her to do some makeup. So it's just going back to what Graham was said, really, when you start to do these films, things come out the woodwork. People come out the woodwork. People recommend other people. And I've got one of those, and you can find one of those over there. and things really do develop. But it's amazing what you also have to deal with on the hoof, because there's always going to be things that you don't think about at the time, and you have to kind of react to, especially over with a long shooting period. Things will come out the woodwork.
So maybe
reminds me about
wigs might help if you
Sorry?
want using
Wigs.
wigs.
Yeah.
that reminds me actually what I was saying about things. People, you the benefit of something that you weren't expecting. This classic sort of Goethe principle thing was this: when we made Full Sunset, we want the makeup done for the soul, because he had some. It was some friend of Santo's came and did that, but bloke considered himself to be expert on dirtying up sets, because I've been back up, everything's got dusty and dirty, and so he came along sort of special stuff, all his own cost and own thing, and we just went around our set and dirtied it up.
Remember that? Yeah.
There's your set, dirtied up for you. So you sort of get this. One thing triggers another.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
Just got to get it running. Get it going.
Yeah. Next slide, please.
We go.
Locations for them. You need to know sort of what you're looking for, but you don't need to wait till the script's finished before you actually do that. You could sort of start looking early. Now, try not to pay. This is the bit of scary bit now, right? But if you could talk your way in, to be honest, most of the time we've talked away, and Steve is the great expert because he got us free for 3 days, a complete castle, and a real castle, not a ruin, and you take a bottle of wine, some chocolates when you arrive. That's the trick, important bit. You take a present, hand it over when you arrive. If there's not a chance to do that, there's no point when you leave. It's a waste of money. It's when you arrive, get the playground at the moment of arrival. This is my cynical rule of thumb, but it normally works. I think it is particularly when we turned up at farm, who sort of perhaps are not really into it and a bit begrudging, but we'll let them do it, sort of as a favour to somebody else who was our sort of perhaps our contact. And then so you turn up with a present, and then you're sort of in, aren't you?
Yeah.
And film in museums or I'll do that first thing. Film in museums. Now, obviously, that's a lot of museums have sort of rooms and things set up as period pieces, and you can get permission to film in some of them. It's they vary in how helpful they are. The Brits have a lovely museum called the Industrial Museum, which is now closed and now been replaced by M Shed, which is off. But the Bristol Industrial Museum was a terrific place because it had all kinds of things set up in there. And when we shot film Clarkson, a lot of it was in there. We were allowed in there on the day it was to the public. Gordon arranged that through his contacts. But if all else, take stills in the museum, which you can do furtively if necessary, and use them with green screen. And we have got examples of having done that in the past. I'm not keen on pointing them out because for people not to realise that they weren't necessarily done that way. Now, of public spaces, by that I mean actually legally public spaces, particularly. One, you get crowds, but I wasn't particularly thinking that, though. It's also the fact that you then run into the bureaucracy with the local council. Now, the council have, I used to work for the council, so I've got full sympathy with councils. But I've got duty, health and safety, and all kinds of other stuff with, and so it's they have often emphases now who can be very helpful, but still have to go through the paperwork. It bogs you down. So if you can avoid that by just avoiding those sort of places, better. Farms are good because traditional type farmings and things like that are good because they cover a multitude of sins. You can use them for all kinds of scene. We on Cabot, I remember this. We were promised the use of a barn to fill the sort of tavern scene interior on a Saturday, and we turned up on a Saturday morning, and yeah, there was the barn. Well, they hadn't told us it was full of hay, and our first job was to entirely empty the place of hay, so we could then do the film, and then put the hay back in again at the end of the end of the day. But free, except for the bottle of wine, it was can't complain. Reiterating, I think private rather than canon premises are much easier to deal with. Arrange them because it's simpler. Don't know if others has got experience with locations. I certainly talking your way in period film is easier than it is a sort of modern film.
Yeah,
that's just my personal view.
Well, even with, again, when we had to film what was supposed to be an Italian mountain in Uncertain Proof, we decided we would do Bream Down. And it's amazing how helpful the National Trust were.
Yeah.
When I got hold of them, spoke to them and told them what we were doing and explained it. And they said, yeah, you can have it for free. Well, as long as you can pick a key up and you've got somebody responsible for opening the gate, you can drive your wagons on. And they were absolutely fantastic. And we spent a couple of days up there shooting. Yeah. And, no, if you don't ask, you don't get. That's the bottom line.
And we've done a lot of filming in St. Paul's Church, which worked really well.
Yeah, we've just always had a good relationship because of the drama group, I think. And it is atmospheric. The crypt is some of the amazing spaces of filming.
We still might be able to get it, to be honest. We know enough people down there to get it, I think. But they do charge, where other places clearly don't. So it's horses for courses. If we desperately need that, then we can get it.
Well, we are planning to book it shortly, really, to have another experiment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've been in touch with them. They quoted some costs, but they weren't sure quite what they were. But I did remind them that we're poor amateurs, so I'm not sure if the prices they were asking for were the ones we paid in the past, or if they thought we were professional. Anyway, I haven't had a reply yet. They're a bit slow.
Places like St. Mary Redcliffe, which will look a bit more, I reckon. They actually have a sort of price thing for fair the cathedral does, which is horrendous. I think St. Mary Redcliffe, thousands a day. But we filmed in there 2 times, all free. The only ones, but we use in the film Cabot, we use St. Mary Redcliffe Church extensively. We've also used the cathedral, and that they have for the rooms we were using. They had some hundreds of pounds a day charge, but we got it free. So people are really kind, helpful.
Well, the castle was thousands a day, wasn't it, for professional film crews?
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. Anyway, should we go on to the next?
Yeah.
Right. Mention St. Cliff. Now,
no, sorry, I'm just reading what you're saying.
Yeah. What I wanted to make about churches was that they not particularly as churches, though occasionally you might want to have a scene which is actually a church, but there's often places in churches that can be used as other places. So this is where we try to use St. Mary as the Palace of Westminster. So do you want to run the clip, Tim? Don't know who that is. This is William Wilberforce, and this is who was an MP who basically led the abolition of the slave trade, and this is meant to be the Westminster sort of entrance to the House Commons. This actually is side aisle at the side of the chancel in St. Mary Redcliffe, and the this I think being a store or an office, the Verger's office or something, and but this side aisle for a building. I mean, the Palace of Westminster this refers to doesn't exist, by the way. It's not the present one. It's the previous one that burned down. So who knows what it looked like, but it looks like to be the Palace of Westminster, doesn't it? So
It's very good.
yeah. There's a bit of, if you look, you can see where we put a bit of wallpaper over a 13 amp socket and a few odd things like that. But basically you can get away with it.
There's a green screen.
Yeah, there was a green screen behind the door.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. It's So, right. Next slide, please. So yeah. Right.
Sorry.
Someone just woke up. Was that you, Sue?
Right. I think we've already covered the first item. I've got under location.
There's only 3 more to go, Sue.
Dust stuff. Floor, you need to put some dirt or straw. It's not because the building might have had dirt on the floor, but it breaks it up. It breaks the sort of visual of the floor, and then items that can't be moved, like radiators, then them with a black cloth, invisible to the audience. They seem to work. Just not there. Similarly with light switches, just hang a piece of cloth in front of it. Nobody asks why there's a piece of cloth hanging there. Now, consider using the same location for different set dressing. Now, we all did this earlier when we had the blokes in the pub and things. Basically, it's really efficient to do that because it's but that was different parts of the same pub, but you can all use the same room for completely different scenes if you just put it in slightly different context. Any comments, or I'll move on because Sue's getting tired and we've still got to do things to mention. Yeah. Next one, then, please.
Horses.
It says if you do a period piece, then horses invariably add something to it. I know they Modern's what was it in the Dale without horses. I don't think we can all pull that stuff pulled off more than once, I think. Then if you haven't got any horsey contacts, but sometimes a friend of a friend or something like that might have somebody, then a providing school, and sometimes it takes their interest like this. It's sort of like, oh, this would be interesting to get involved with. And we've had quite a few horses in our films and never had to pay. Again, things. And this is actually sometimes where the things like the Goethe principle cuts in. Somebody you used with, then, I know somebody else who's got another horse, I'll bring them in board, this sort of thing. It triggers on this sort of chain reaction. Now, the film actual horse, you probably have to use doubles in long shots, so you want loose clothing, taking into account when you're planning the clothing for that character at the beginning. In close-ups, place the actor on, have the horse led by an experienced horse person, and frame the excluding the horse person. It's not ideal that, and you probably end up having the cameraman walk backwards in front of the horse just to work, but it's better than the big problem is health and safety, which means riding hats must be worn. We can't get involved, which doesn't have the people up in the pools. So characters on horses must be wearing hats of some or cloak, which covers it. And it's possibly it's probably got to be made especially to fit over the top of the
right.
So right hat. So we had when we made Clarkson, we had trike hats, which actually meant to be bigger, so they'd fit over the top hat. We also, when we made Uncertain Proof, Ray Hendy made some helmets that would go over the training hat, except that the model riding hat we were given turned out all of the horse turned up on the day. So it was instances and gaffer tape to cut the back off the back of his lovely made helmet open, so he could stick it on top of his own helmet, and we only filmed the front, so they couldn't see that the helmet didn't actually go around the head. It worked. It's fine in the film. You can't tell that's what it is. But that issue with riding hats is a bit of a pain, to be honest. But there's no about it. But you've got to take it into account early on and say the clothing that characters are wearing is appropriate to hide these issues. Yeah. Next one then, please. Vehicles. Right, this is the real problem area, I think, and can be difficult, particularly horse ones. And I've never been involved in this. Nearest drawn vehicle is a bit of sky that was put into Clarkson, and so you might recall, if anybody wants to watch the Jenner film, which is well worth watching, there's a lengthy sequence which was a montage we showed at the last meeting of a stagecoach, and this was from a museum. The museum no longer exists, unfortunately. It's a stagecoach museum, but that's long, and that's, as far as I'm aware, in the years, is the last time we had a vehicle in the club film. Old car, right? Old cars. Now, the problem with old cars seems to me is the danger they look too clean always. I'm a bit obsessed with things looking dirty. You appreciate, but the theme here. But old cars being too clean is something on a lot of V-Pro as well. That problem, because they borrow a car from some car enthusiasts when their car mucking up. And I think it's probably not unreasonable to get somebody in an old car along if you contact a sort of club or thing. Saying, well, we actually want to cover it in yuck and stuff is a different matter. I noticed that, remember, Stuart, who was unfortunately not here today, but he got an army truck for Pigeon Post, quite find. He found there was a bloke in Bath who Dave will know about this, won't he? Dave, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there. Yeah.
Yeah, that bloke who had the army vehicles that he saw in Bath in Newbridge.
Say it again. With what vehicles was it again?
Well, he had various army vehicles and American truck stuff, all in his sort of Newbridge. You around the front that scene with they call on the old lady. Yes.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Yes, but that's where he got for the Pigeon Post from, and
that's right. But you're right about the old vehicles. Is that they're too well looked after? They kind of want dirtying up, don't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's funny actually. You talk about props and things, and I was just talking to somebody today. Actually, his wife runs a second-hand shop, and it's all period furniture from the 50s and 60s and that. So I'm kind of thinking now, when you got that spark of inspiration, you think, I see that leads to this. And I know somebody who's got runs a clothing emporium, and that I thought, oh yeah, that could work. It's starting to happen.
I don't know, watched the Ipcrest fight on television, the new one on the ITV.
No, I've not seen that one. No.
Oh well, that's 1962. They've set that, and it's so they've sort of made it fetish of trying to get all the sort of period tales, right? The cars and and the rest of it. Yeah.
As you know, I do old vintage hi-fi and stuff like that, and old stereograms and things. So we're nearly there.
Well, if you're looking for a Bristol story that you could do a drama around, I wouldn't say doing a documentary on it, but doing a drama around it, was the Bristol bus boycott in 1963. There's all sorts of possibilities there if you want to do a 1960s thing, and that would get wide community engagement.
Yeah, I think it's something twee about the 60s. As you say, you got to get good props and things, and that just takes you back, I suppose. Well, I don't remember a lot about it, but it's it's making all those contacts.
Film we did consider making, but we've abandoned because we never got beyond the sort of stage. Was what about the last hang Bristol, which was 1963, and that would have evolved that 1906 challenge of doing 1960s, much more recent time props, costume and things like that, which is trickier than.
I mean, the vintage clothing is around, the furniture's around. I mean, I don't think it's as big a challenge as you might think it is. I mean, I don't think it's more of a challenge than doing something from the 17th century, really. It's just people aren't used to doing it. I mean, these things exist. I mean, there are vehicles that are still driving. There's pieces of hi-fi and radios and stuff that are still working. I think it's something that is possible.
The last point I put on here is there a case in special effects, and I put down here in e.g. forced perspective. I don't know if anyone can remember Vincent, our German member, who gave us a presentation. Was it the beginning of last year or the year before? Now, on using with junction with luncheon stuff which we're experimenting with. But if you look at forced perspective on YouTube, there's loads of YouTube, and it's forever some of the stuff that's done, and there might be a case for that of effect.
Can I just interrupt and say, you mean forced perspective? Is that that classic thing where somebody walks back to a very fancy sports car, and then suddenly a hand from the heavens comes down?
That's the one. Yes.
Right,
that's
okay.
It, yes. It's a classic Hollywood technique. I mean, it was the way Long's films would do it, was that forced perspective. They sometimes call it hanging miniatures and things like that, but they wouldn't have done that way. I mean, it's a very well established thing. The advantage you get with it is that shadows and things are all correct because you're using the same light sort of things, like daylight and things. Yes, that sort of thing. But I've never done it. But I think it. And we were a minute ago about possibly having an experiment day, and that's one of the things that perhaps we might experiment with. Forced perspective, just see whether you can actually do something useful. Next one, please. Special effects. This is this is my personal views. Mix traditional effects with computer effects. Mix real and green screen. By that I mean don't use CGI on its own. And that doesn't seem to work very well, pure CGI. But if you mix things together from different sources, then it's fine. Particularly good thing to do is to composite still photographs of real builds. Mike George was the great master of this, and did special effects. Clark's Way, he did them on Uncertain Proof Way. So they then combined with green screen, you get the right effect. We're not sort of talking this evening on all the issues about compositing, because there's all kinds of complicated things like eye lines and things like that go into all this sort of issue. But the compositing of real buildings remodeled so that they look like someone else, I mean, it's really worth doing, and it's better than CGI. And don't use CGI on its own. It's all right if you mix it with something else, like real location or some live action. But when we have CGI on its own, is when it's iffy. That's my personal.
I think it works best when actors are interacting with something that's real on set. And it's the backgrounds that are CGI. I mean, one shoot that I was on was a real caravan, and it was shot in a real caravan, handheld, but outside all of the windows were green screened outside, lit green screens, and that worked well. That was believable.
Sorry, but what's the image that was put on the green screen a real?
Sorry,
what's the image that was put on the screen?
It was a sandstorm.
On the window.
Outside
the windows
window.
Replaced? It was a real.
It was outside.
Real,
the green screens were placed outside of the caravan, but the caravan was in the studio.
Yeah, but the shot that you would see through the window, what place was it?
Sorry, was what
through the window?
Yeah, it was a sandstorm.
Oh, right. So it was just a sandstorm. It wasn't sort of a buildings or anything, or.
Yeah, but I mean, it could have been buildings or anything. Yeah, I mean, it was handheld, so they had tracking markers on the green screens, so that it could be tracked in post.
Yeah. Sounds like the kind of thing that would delight people and horrify others. Tracking the camera. Yes. Right. That's my own view that CGI on its own isn't good enough yet, but with CGI mind, and ideally combined 3 ways with real buildings, then it starts to work. I think that is to professional films. See, you can often spot the CGI, big budget ones. Yeah. Next one, please. Was that it? That's it. So, any questions or discussion? I've got something else to just like to raise before that. Before you finish, briefly.
Okay, all yours, Graham.
Stunt silence.
No, I was going to say, Graham, there's just one thing. For those of you that are in Bristol, there's a lovely costume centre at Frome. It's a huge area just outside the centre of Frome, where you could get all sorts of clothing and shoes and hats and all sorts of stuff going, right through the centre is. And we went out there, Jane's mum and myself, to get some stuff for Uncertain Proof, and they did a job lot again. You can have all of these items for a month for X pounds. But you're so used to going to the various ones in and around Bristol, but there's an enormous one out there, and you could spend probably a morning out there just looking around all the stuff. It's I can probably get the name of it somewhere. I forget it. I think it's called Absolutely Fabulous, but I'm not 100% sure. But it is somewhere to refer to, especially people that are joining us this evening that might be from, down in Somerset, Wiltshire, whatever. It's easier to get to than some of the places in Bristol. Anyway. Back to you, Graham.
I was going to say, Steve, is that an original Jack Vetriano?
Original what, Clarence?
Jack Vetriano, behind you.
Oh, not an original. No, original. An original. I'm an original.
We've got just briefly, just mentioned 3 possible period films that have been sort of banded around as things that the club might do. These are not club project means at the moment, are possible ideas of what they do. The first one's already been alluded to, I think, by which was talking about something like the show of Strengthening. Do you want to say something about?
Are you talking to me? Who are you talking to? What?
Yeah.
Huh? Oh, me. Right. Okay.
Yes.
Keep breaking up, Graham. That's the problem.
Sorry. Right. I was just mentioning about Ashton Court.
Oh, yeah.
Mansion. And your idea about whether we could do something which was like a pageant. Is that the right way for people through the time?
Right. Well, no. What I was thinking of, right, when we were discussing doing the history of Ashton Court and realised, there's far too much to do, so we concentrated on the house, but the actual people, the owners of the place, are fascinating, and they're all real characters. And when Show of Strength Theatre did a production at Ashton Court called The Mansion Through Time. I don't know if anybody went to see it, but it was brilliant. It was really good, and it was, and they got all the characters really well. And there was like 5 different places that we walked to, where they did little bits, and it was really, really good. And I thought, oh, something like that would be good. And then I thought, well, hang on. I know they are a professional theatre group, but they've got actors, they've got costumes, and they've got the script. Why don't we say, would you be interested in doing this production, and we'll film it and make it into a film? I wondered if there'd be interest. Anybody got any contacts with this theatre group?
Yeah.
Wondered.
So are you talking about just filming a stage production,
Well,
or actually doing it as a film? Because they're very different.
as
I
a
was just
film.
talking about doing it as redoing it as a film, but using their resources and
Yeah.
script.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But they've got the script. They wrote the script, and they did the acting, and they've got the costumes and everything, and it was brilliant. It was really, really good. And there was like 5 different stages in the production, so we could have like 5 cameras filming each shot, maybe, if they're interested in doing that. And then I thought that would be a really good idea. They did have someone there with a camera, so they are, but whether, I haven't seen anything from it. I think it was just for their own personal interest, for someone to take some filming of the production.
How long is the production? How long? Yeah, running time.
It went for about half an hour.
Okay, so it's quite manageable.
Yeah. And then they're doing this Princess Caribou as well in North Street in Westminster. So I mean, that's a costume drama. That's really interesting. I think it's an amazing story. Whether they'd be interested in us filming that as well.
Perhaps if we could see their own recording just for reference and see what we can pick apart and think, right, okay, what potential it's got and everything, because things on stage are for an audience that's live, whereas the whole thing takes on a different concept when you've got closer camera angles and lighting and all the rest of it.
Yeah,
they're re-manipulating that material. Re-engineering it.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, it takes some working out and everything, but it's an idea, I thought. Because if not, who's going to write the script?
Well, yeah, that would be a relatively, if they were agreeable, it would be one of the projects you could get going on a bit faster than some of the things we mentioned tonight.
Yeah.
About the short circuits of it.
Yeah, but about the logistics of like things like copyright and all that sort of thing, we have to sort that out. And
Yeah, but if it's in their gift or not, isn't it? It's not like we've got to deal with a third party. That's the thing. We just
maybe it could be then something they could sell at one of their shows if they. I mean, it's obviously specifically to Ashton Court, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about the Smith family.
Yeah,
the history of the Smith family.
I can remember we did things like the New Room and that, and then we filmed all that and dramatized it, and then suddenly it became a bestseller. On DVD. Only as an idea, as a money spinner type thing.
So, but I think they're a professional theatre group, aren't they? So they might want some money for doing it.
Well, I mean, what we did with Mark Topping was that was where we got a cut.
It was on a kind of profit share basis. Was it?
Yes, we got a profit of the thing. So I mean, that is not insurmountable. But anyway, can I move on because we're short of time now? There's another film which you've also alluded to tonight, which was Tim Braithwaite's idea of a film based around the Christmas Carol. So that's another period film, which was, I think, a mixture of modern day action, or is it modern day action, and scenes from the Dickens's Christmas Carol. there's been various attempts at scripting this, and there is a pretty detailed script for this film. I don't know if Tim approves of it, because it sort of got killed off by COVID, really, been taken any further, but perhaps we need to resurrect it now as a project. But Tim, do you want to say anything about your vision of how it was going to be incredibly accurate historically and so forth?
You know, I've just this minute uploaded a little trailer thing. It's not a trailer. It's absolutely terrible. I've done it in a couple of hours. I've really aimed for doing it this evening, and I've rushed to try and do it. It's just processing, so probably not get a chance to do it. But I'll basically put it out there in the next few days. That sort of is a quick demonstration as to what I was going for, a bit of a feeler. Yeah, I just wanted to do something that I felt was true to Dickens' Christmas Carol. I always loved the story, and I've never, ever felt it was done right. The more I look at it, the more I'm convinced, and the more I believe I am the world's leading authority on the Christmas Carol, and nobody understands it except me. You know, so I just wanted to basically put it out there the way I wanted it to be. You know, the Dickens Christmas Carol that I always wanted it to be, and no other has done it so far.
Right. The final one I want to mention tonight is a proposal for a film by David Price, who's in Leeds today, so he's not with us. I think he's looking at universities for his son. But he has discovered that Brunel and Charles Dickens were in Bristol at the same time. Back in 1840 something or other, when both were pretty much, you know, I think I can't remember which way around. His career was on the slide, and Brunel's was on the rise. Well, Brunel's career was on the slide, and Dickens was on the rise. I don't remember which way around it is, but there's a sort of one is on the way up or the way down at that, and which is true. But at that time also, Brunel had. When they built the suspension bridge, basically they built the towers, and then they wanted to connect the two together. They actually never did this because the company went bankrupt and was never finished. But basically, they put an iron rod across the gorge. I mean, it's a hell of that in itself is a hell of a feat, rod across the gorge, and then they ran a sort of little cable car in a basket to ride across the gorge. I mean, pretty hair-raising, especially as on one occasion they had a rope training from the basket. It tangled with the mast of a ship going down the river. And
does David Price want us to film this?
Oh, so, but he had this idea, Brunel and Dickens going across on this in this basket across the gorge, and he's not here to explain this properly, but and so you'd have these two characters, but there'll be sort of story arcs, like one's on the up and one's on the down, and then there's some sort of reversal, because they get trapped, breaks down, and they're stuck in the middle, sort of thing.
This will definitely be green screen then.
Yeah, the green screen. Yes, we're not putting an iron rod across the gorge. Yes.
Oh, if it was a real iron rod, it'd be brown
as well. Yes.
Yes. If it was a real iron rod, it would be brown screen, I think.
Yes, but it also we'd have to take the existing suspension bridge down before we could film it, of course. So
we can do anything.
So
remember the Goethe principle, Graham?
Yes, right. So anyway, so it's an interesting concept, but it's only at concept stage at the moment. But it is really interesting. What one? I think Dickens was on tour. He used to read his books in public, and I think he was on tour from my memory of this. And he gave me permission to mention this tonight, so I would. But it's one of these things, sort of two sort of very famous characters around at the same time, and now know whether they actually met. This is a sort of a fictional thing, based on the fact that they were both here. But whether they actually interred, but there have been other films. Sorry, there have been other films Sorry.
I was going to say. I mean, I can see that there's an interesting idea there, but I think it could be quite dull from a visual point of view. You've got they're on the go. That's the whole film. There's not a lot of visual storytelling there.
It's like being stuck in the lift, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think they were going to put. His idea was you put in. They're in peril. That's the point.
Yeah.
They're jammed, so they're trying to free themselves because the thing jammed.
So have they got tangled up with this ship, or was that a different occasion?
Well, I can't remember if he was actually put the. I mean, they did. This didn't really happen. The incident with the ship was a real incident.
Yeah,
but he throws that into this story. Yes,
you could bring that into the story. I think.
Yes. Oh yeah, you can make that a part of the story. It was realistic. It wasn't Brunel or Dickens who were in the basket at the time that happened.
I mean, it would be more interesting with flashbacks of other scenes and other things. And I think.
Oh yeah. I mean,
I think two guys stuck in the basket for an hour and a half.
That wasn't the whole film. You had to have the intro stuff about what they were doing there, sort of stuff. Yeah. I think what it was is that this is when the bridge was going bankrupt, and I think that's it. And therefore on the down thing, and Dickens is the whiz kid also, up, and that was it. I mean, Brunel's subsequently bounced back, but this fits the arc of the story. He's on a depression and back.
I wonder if Gordon would be interested in something with that film, doing something with that film.
Well, it's pets, admittedly, in a slightly different way than normally conceived. It's it's a sort of doable film in the sense green screen, so he's got to get the effect. Not impossible sort of film. It's not over ambitious film. It would be nice to have some sort of shots with Dickens reading his book and all this sort of stuff. You don't just want them turning up. You want a bit of depth to it. Yes, as Caroline said.
Yeah. Sounds interesting.
Yeah. So
could be.
What do we do? Do we take a vote on this? Do we move it forward? Do a poly poll?
We get David to write his script. I think so.
Well, I think he's run. I think he's done a rough draft.
Yeah,
but he hasn't.
Maybe we have a read through.
Yes, that's it. Now, read through, record it, rewrite it.
As long as he's not doing the editing.
Careful, this has been remembered too.
The Christmas Carol one has had loads of work done on it, and I think it's got lots of potential for atmospheric filming, and if we can get some good locations as well.
Is there a script available to read?
Yes, there's a script for that one. Not necessarily a agreed script, but that there is a script.
Shall I circulate that?
Yes.
Yeah, good to see. How much does that differ from your vision, Tim?
I don't know if we showed it to Tim.
No, I seen it. I don't know why or whether I should have done, but I have done. To be honest, I don't like it, but hey ho, it's what it is.
Do you have a script, though, Tim? Do you have a script of what you think you wanted to make?
My script, Caroline, was the book.
That
was my whole intention. I personally believe if you cannot make a film according to the script in the book, you are not good enough. I know that sounds tremendously arrogant, but I absolutely believe it's true. And I believe that, I did it and it would work. I absolutely believe it would work. And I believe it would have been the superlative version. But hey ho, I've put a little link in Thingamabobber, but it's not come up yet. I don't know if you can connect to it, in the chat, but it's only a very, very rough thing that I put today, and it's a couple of little clips that I put. I worked on it quite hard for a long while, and I lost all my project files. So these I've chucked together in a couple of hours and tried to sort of like get a little bit of a feel. And it really is a couple of hours. It's very rough. The continuity's crap. And there's no music, there's no sound. And but it's just, you know, there for a feel. I don't know, it's not come up yet. I'll probably send it as a
Send it an email. Send it out an email.
Yeah.
Got the link in there.
Yeah, I will. You know, considering it was only a few hours, I'm actually quite proud of it because I spent a couple of years of it and it didn't look a lot better. No, it's just a little idea as to what it might have been. I don't know.
If we think when we get that location of Ashton Court and that, and how flexible that was, both inside, outside, externally.
Ashton Court would have been brilliant, David. When I saw that last thing, you know, the biker thing with the stairs, and actually, was it in another one as well with all the stairs? It would have been superb.
Yeah, and even the outside where the horse stables where they were, it almost looked like another little street, didn't it? You could get away with a little cameo sort of scenes of that, you know, all cleverly lit, you know, less is more and all that sort of stuff. If we still have permissions for using Ashton Court as a backdrop. I know you've done some storyboard shots as well, didn't you? And you brought along to the club one evening. And they were very atmospheric, and well, you were the character, weren't
you? They were, they were stills from what I'd done. Yeah, like I say, I lost all my project files, but I tried to put a few little things together because I'm not too sure everybody gets it just from photos. You know, they like to see the movement and things. You know, so I worked really hard to show it tonight, but it's just not quite there. But
what shame!
Hey ho, you know.
Well, send us a link.
Yeah, I will do. Like I said, I've just put it on YouTube, but I think it's processing or something or other. I've put a link in chat, but it doesn't seem to, or I don't know how to get hold of it. But I think it's only in standard definition anyway, so it probably looks terrible. And there's no sound. It's just pictures.
Have you thought about things
it's just pictures. But what I really wanted to do, and the reason why I did it, is I'm crap. I mean, I had 2 weeks to get this thing together, and I'm such a last minute person, you know, that it came last minute today, and I thought, I've got to do it. I'm going to do it today. And then I got up this morning, and my wife had left me a list of things that she wanted me to do. Do this, do that, do this. I thought, ugh! You know, so I fitted it in between going to work and everything else just to try and get something done. And I've just been finishing it off actually this evening while I've been, you know, listening. But like I say, it's pretty bad, but hey ho, it's something.
Have you thought about things like music and stuff? Should we get other people involved with that creative side of things?
To be honest, I said to Graham, he can go wherever he wants with a script. That's absolutely fine. I wanted to do it my way or the byway. You know, don't get me wrong, that sounds arrogant and everything else, but that was the reason I wanted to do it. You know, I didn't want to do another version of Christmas Carol. I wanted to do my version of a Christmas Carol. And that was it, you know. So ask Graham or Oliver or Tim who've been involved with the script, you know, and you know they're my blessing to go whichever way they want on it. You know, I mean, that's absolutely fair enough. But you know,
I wonder where we are with timing and that. If we can get it done for Christmas,
there's one every year.
Yes, you would have thought you learned by now, wouldn't you?
Right. Well, we should look forward to seeing that from you, Tim. I think I'm going to send out an email straight after this meeting with Graham's PowerPoint presentation and the script for A Christmas Present, which is what we've just been discussing, the variation on from Tim's original idea. Anyway, it's time to go home, I think, isn't it? It's 10:10. That's my bedtime.
Could I just say, could I thank Tim, my glamorous assistant, for switching this tonight, but also importantly, he actually created the slides as well.
Well, only from your content, I just polished them up. Did you notice, and did anybody notice that the colours reflected the Ukrainian flag?
Oh yeah, of course.
How positive is that, eh?
Wow.
Right. Anyway, right. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you very much, Graham, for that, because you put the work in to write it. I just tarted it up, really, and pressed the button. So, well, thank you all very much, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks,
Cheers.
guys.
Yes, bye all.
Good night.
Goodbye, all. I'm going to press the button now and kick everybody out of the room. Bye-bye.